Yo, this is some real-life girl with a dragon tattoo shit. So the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is being accused of orchestrating a massive influence campaign to manipulate Western public opinion by spreading false information that's ruined the lives of innocent people. And all so the regime can consolidate power and ensure the continuation of authoritarian control in the region. All that's what's been uncovered and alleged in numerous media reports, leaks, and now lawsuits. And one of those lawsuits directly links an American school, the George Washington University, and the director of its esteemed program on extremism as perpetrators. But also, I'm getting ahead of myself. The details are juicy. But before we get to the good stuff, we need to start at the very beginning. So all of this starts with a just stunning bombshell report published by The New Yorker in March of last year. And I mean, we could just do an entire show on the details of that 10,000-word article. But the bullet points version is that this investigation focused on a man by the name of Hazim Nada. He's an American citizen who lived in Italy and founded a Swiss-based oil trading business called Lord Energy. But Nada was forced to file for bankruptcy after a smear campaign linked him and his company to the Muslim Brotherhood, or the Islamic organization that gained power in Egypt as an opposition group following the Arab Spring in 2011, and also has since been labeled a terrorist group by several authoritarian governments, with most of those regimes being concentrated in the Middle East, including the UAE. And the allegations against Nada appear to stem from the fact that his father, who emigrated to the US from Egypt, had been part of the Brotherhood. But Nada himself, there was no connection. He was a secular, proud American who had only visited Egypt once and didn't want to return. And in fact, when he started his company, he had to prove to every banker that he met that the business had no connection to his father. But between 2017 and 2018, news articles started coming out claiming that he and the company had ties to terrorism and the Brotherhood. And soon, Wikipedia articles started to reflect those allegations, and before long, he was blacklisted on key banking databases and had major banks pulling out of his business. With then, after months of emotional distress and panic attacks, Nada ultimately lost his company, his reputation, and eventually his marriage. And for years, the people and reasoning behind the smear campaign that ruined his life largely remained a mystery. But then, in 2021, a group of anonymous hackers started to send him leaked internal communications from a Geneva-based private intelligence firm called Alps Services. And that was run by a man by the name of Mario Brero, who had a history of run-ins with the law, including a 2012 incident in France where he was convicted of illegally obtaining and disseminating information in an investigation. And over time, the hackers shared terabytes of stolen files from Alp, including emails, reports, memos, photographs, invoices, and even recorded phone calls, with all of it revealing that Brero had done intelligence work for a wide range of shady characters and foreign authoritarian regimes. And wouldn't you know it, that roster included the UAE, with the hackers eventually showing Nada files that proved the smear campaign had been orchestrated by the company's leader, MBZ. Not to be confused with the Saudi leader, MBS, Mohammed Bonesaw. But this guy, not much better when it comes to mass human rights abuses and authoritarianism. And specifically, the hacked materials indicated that the UAE had hired Alp in its long-running feud with Qatar, which reached a boiling point in 2017 when the UAE and other Gulf nations launched a blockade against the country, cutting off diplomatic and trade ties. And a big part of the reason for the blockade was that the UAE and its allies alleged that Qatar was supporting terrorism, with them explicitly pointing to its support of and ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, among others. And as far as why MBZ and other Gulf leaders had such a vendetta against the Brotherhood, that could also fill a whole other show. But basically, it boils down to this. The Brotherhood helped overthrow autocrats during the Arab Spring and emerged as a notable political force. MBZ views them and other religious opposition groups as a threat not only to his own authoritarian control, but really the control of other autocratic regimes in the Gulf as well. And as part of the blockade, the Gulf nations launched a massive influence campaign to convince the US and other Western powers of Qatar's connections to terrorism, with that in turn kicking off an unprecedented lobbying frenzy, with the oil-rich nation spending obscene amounts of money on lawyers and PR firms in a battle to control the narrative in the West. And the hacked Alp files show that in August of 2017, Brero went to the UAE to get in on that insanely lucrative action, with him preparing 14 pages of talking points to try and get the Emiratis to hire him in their fight against Qatar and the Brotherhood, writing, "We would aim to discredit our targets by discreetly and massively diffusing the embarrassing and compromising information. In the eyes of the media, public, officials, they would appear as perverts, corrupts, or extremists." And even explicitly saying, the power of dark PR should not be underestimated. Many experts argue that Hillary Clinton lost the presidential elections due to fake news relayed on social media and non-traditional media, and promising that we would use similar tools against your opponents. And just to make sure you did not miss that is him literally offering to spread lies about the opponents of a full-blown authoritarian regime. So of course, the UAE is like, fuck yes, sounds great. And they agree to an initial 4 to 6 month budget of 1.5 million euros. Now, very notably here, Brero initially just proposed targeting people who were known Brotherhood sympathizers, but that later extended to others like Nada, who had incredibly tenuous ties to the group. So Alp just went to work trying to establish those connections, and the files show that this included drafting damning Wikipedia entries and paying journalists to publish hit pieces alleging his involvement with the group. Sometimes those stories were published under fake names, and at one point they even created a fake journalist who they billed as an expert. And as a part of this effort, Brero brought on Lorenzo Vidino, the director of GW's program on extremism. He had long argued against Islamic organizations, and Georgetown University's Bridge Initiative on Islamophobia had described him as an academic who, quote, promotes conspiracy theories about the Muslim Brotherhood and is connected to numerous anti-Muslim think tanks. And according to partial official records, Brero paid Vidino more than 13,000 euros for his work that included a series of gossipy reports and a list of other suspected Islamists to go after. So then, after Lord Energy filed for bankruptcy, which Brero bragged about and took credit for in an update to the Emiratis, the government then agreed to pay him to go after other targets on that list. And that is where the shit really takes off, with internal ALP accounting showing that the UAE gave him at least 5.7 million euros between 2017 and 2020. And while the leaked files given to Nada did outline some of Brero's work, a few months after the New Yorker article, a group of European media outlets published an investigative series detailing how far-reaching this campaign was. Which at this point, I have to ask, are you ready? Because the shit is insane. According to the outlets, ALP gave the UAE the names of over 1,000 people in 400 organizations in 18 European countries, all labeled as part of the Muslim Brotherhood network in Europe. Now, obviously, ALP didn't do smear campaigns on everyone, but for those who were targets, their lives were turned completely upside down. And one of those people was Farid Havez, an Austrian scholar who specializes in Islamophobia, where he was very well regarded in Austria, frequently being published in newspapers, doing engagements. And around 2015, he began to find himself the target of a whisper campaign spreading rumors alleging that he had some kind of vague connection to the Brotherhood. And so slowly, he stopped getting published in newspapers and his reputation began to fall. With then all of this culminating in Hafez, along with dozens of others, being raided by armed police in a 2020 operation called Operation Luxor. And a huge key thing here, Austrian authorities specifically cited a report written by Vidino on the Brotherhood to obtain the search warrant used for the raid, with Vidino also serving as a witness against some of the targets. And very notably here, the operation failed to produce any evidence of terrorism, and literally no one was arrested or convicted. In fact, Austrian courts even ruled that the whole thing was illegal. But like with Nada, this whole ordeal upended Hafez's life. His reputation was ruined. His financial assets were frozen. He and his young children, they suffered stress and trauma from the armed raid. And that is also part of the reason why we've spent so much time talking about these two men, because now they've both filed lawsuits. Right, with Nada's suit, which was filed earlier this year, it names the UAE, MBZ, the state-run oil company, and ALP, and asks for nearly $2.8 billion in damages. With the suit outlining a lot of what was already revealed in the leaked documents, accusing the defendants of spreading false narratives about Nada's ties to the Brotherhood that destroyed his life, also claiming that journalists and Vidino were paid to smear him and dozens of others, and asserting that MBZ himself played a key role, providing ultimate approval authority over the enterprise's disinformation operations. Beyond that, Nada also argues that this campaign wasn't just ideological, saying the UAE viewed his business as competition and wanted to kick him out of the market. Right, and with that, noting that Lord Energy cost the state oil company around $830 million in revenue in the years before, which is notably why he is suing them for antitrust violations as well as for fraud and racketeering. And as far as Hafez's suit, which was filed in late March, it shares some similarities, but it is a bit different. Right, while he also makes many of the same allegations and accuses the defendants of racketeering and fraud, Hafez is asking for a much smaller $10 million in damages, and his suit mostly focuses on Vidino, GW, and ALP. And that's actually super significant because foreign governments have often been accused of giving big donations to universities to buy influence, but this suit also goes way further. Right? It alleges that a top school and one of its staff were involved in a shadowy disinformation campaign to damage reputations on behalf of an authoritarian foreign regime, with the lawsuit specifically stating GWU and Vidino engaged in a well-cloaked conspiracy to defraud authorities, academia, and the press, all while holding themselves out as independent and objective academic actors. And to that point, you have experts saying that this lawsuit is also very important because it shines a light on the possible influence that foreign money can have on American universities. With Benjamin Freeman, for example, the director of the Democratizing Foreign Policy program at the Quincy Institute, explaining U.S. universities receiving millions and even hundreds of millions of dollars from authoritarian regimes are going to be a lot less likely to offer critical commentary of those regimes. Right? And this is also significant as this is coming as we've been seeing a lot of discussion about universities divesting from foreign money in conversations about the Israel-Gaza war. Though, of course, with that, I am not saying that is a direct one-to-one, but these two things definitely run parallel to one another. And like with many things, when you see something being done, when you see something being said, there is a conversation of, is there money behind it and where does it come from? But with now all of that said and broken down, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts here? I'd absolutely love to hear from you in those comments down below.